Implementing organizational change. A project for organizational behavior by Nicole, Kylie, Miguel, and George for Dr. Monique Herod. We will begin by discussing what is organizational change and why do organizations change. The definition of organizational change includes the restructuring of roles, processes, and systems for performance improvement. Restructuring is a major part of organizational change and is the process of reorganizing a company's structure, roles, and/or operations in order to improve the efficiency, adapt to market changes, or provide realignment with strategic goals. Restructuring often involves changing the organizational hierarchy, reporting relationships, departmental divisions, and/or other tasks and processes. Change and restructuring are very relevant in today's organizations. Organizations will inevitably face changes, and they must develop processes in order to ensure that these changes stay viable. This means long-term successful implementation. There is pressure both internally or inside the organization, as well as externally or forces outside the organization that demands that organizations change. Some of these examples include market demand, leadership changes, technology, but we'll get more into that in a bit. Ultimately, the reasons why organizations change is in order to better meet their goals. This can be in efficiency, adaptability, and even alignment with strategic vision. An organization does not have to be failing in order to implement change or undergo restructuring efforts. There is a scale of change from small to large, but change can be scary. It can be risky for management, and to the employees, it can threaten the security of the environment at their work. Ultimately, change is implemented for the betterment of the company, whether that be for a goal such as changing technology to help produce more efficiency, or to have a newly acquisitioned company run under the same structure as the new owners. We should not be scared of organizational change. Next, we will be talking about the various forces for change. I have mentioned some before, but what reasons would an organization have in order to implement change? There are a multitude of reasons why an organization would need to implement change and/or restructuring efforts. Some of these examples of the forces for change would be technological change, changes in information processing/communication, competition, market demands, declining performance, changes in leadership, and acquisitions. Change can be as simple as updating the telephones used in the office, or as major as moving from a 5-day work week with 8-hour shifts to a 4-hour work week with 10-hour shifts. Some people will be excited for these changes. Others may feel threatened, scared, and unsure. Any changes made take time and effort to be adjusted to. This is largely due to efforts from management, which we will talk about more thoroughly later. But leading by example is huge for ensuring that organizational change stays viable in the long term. And also from openness from employees. Employee resistance can also be a huge obstacle to making sure that organizational change is done successfully. From small scale to large scale, these forces that make up changes are made in order to help the company run better. Types of organizational change. The various forces for change actually lead us into the actual types of organizational changes. By grouping some of these forces for change, we can actually categorize them into types of organizational change. Each category has different forces, tasks, and processes in order to implement change into the organization. These are categories of initiatives that are implemented into existing organizational structures that are different than how the organization was running previously, in order to help that organization better meet their goals. The main types of organizational change that we will be discussing in our project include structural changes, restructuring, task redesign, technological changes, quality of work-life programs, leadership changes, and acquisitions/mergers/reorganizations.
Types of structural change. Structural change affects every part of a company, and it is important to understand and learn how to properly change your company and what it will affect before any changes are made. To start, structural change affects all parts of workers' life, like performance appraisal and rewards, while also, in a general sense, affecting decision making and things like communication processing systems. And in an overall perspective, from top to bottom, CEO to janitor in the company, it can have a major effect on employees, right? With either morale being boosted or destroyed depending on how the change is carried out. One of the major aspects of structural change is something called task redesign. And on a simple level, this can be explained as the direct alteration of jobs, right? With things all over the company being affected, like updating what tasks are expected, adding or removing responsibilities, and changes in equipment. However, it is not just the changing of tasks. The internal technology of the company can be changed as well. This is things like operating systems, and depending on how the company is improving on the equipment used, this can be a huge increase in employee morale or a huge decrease as funds were spent elsewhere, and the employees understand that and they take that as a knock on their productivity. And I think the best way it was put was by Richard Walton. Change can affect the quality of the work life, and humanizing the workplace is vital for workers' happiness and just the production of the company and the profitability. On a basic level, internal change can be something like replacing a CEO or retooling the board of directors. However simple this may sound, something like going public can have massive effects on the companies, the higher-ups like the CEO and everyone up there, on their job security and the job security of the employees on the lower levels and their morale in general. All that being said, it is not an easy task to put on your company. The cost alone of having an internal change, big or small, could be a death blow to some smaller companies. And couple that with having it done without employee knowledge or without care for the employees at the center of the change, it could spell disaster for most small and big companies, as we've seen in the past. As we see outlined in the barrier to change management chart, employee morale is a vital aspect of making change work within a company. Without employees at the core or reworking of the change, the company won't work, it won't be productive, and the change won't be as effective as I assume it would have hoped to be. Lastly, I think it is important we focus not only how the employees feel or react to change that is good or bad for them, but how the monetary constraints would affect the output and pay and insurance and mass layoffs. Meaning, simply, if it's too costly for a company to internally change or rework, yet they carry it out anyways for whatever reason it may be, it might not have the desired effects because the lack of funds being diverted elsewhere can result to layoffs for the lower level employees or even the higher ups, and cutting things like equipment or insurance or anything of the like. So overall, it's important to focus not only on how the internal change will affect the output of a company, but on an internal level, the employee productivity and happiness. Because without the employees, the company is nothing.
Today I will be talking about managing successful change. Some things to keep in mind when managing successful change is communication and mechanism to support change. Another is clear goals, job descriptions, organizational charts, training, survey feedback, team building, transition management, and steps for change. Another thing to keep in mind is planned improvement through behavioral science. Another is emphasis on strategy, leadership, and team development. On a chart that we included on table 16.4 is keys to managing successful organization change and development. Key 1, consider global issues. An impact from this would be keeping in touch with the latest global developments and change handled in different cultures. Another is taking a holistic view of the organization. Another impact with this would be it helps anticipate the effects of change on the social system and culture. Small start, working out details and supporting benefits of the change in those who might resist. Securing top management support. It helps get dynamic correlation on the side of change. It creates safeguard and cultural change, heads off problems of power and control. Encouraging participation by those affected by the change, minimizing the transition problems of control, resistance, and task redefinition. Foster open communication, minimizing transition problems of resistance and information and control systems. Rewarding those who contribute to change, minimizing transition problems of resistance and control systems. Next, I will be talking about the role management and implementing organizational change. Leading by examples, managers must demonstrate commitment to change through their actions and attitudes. Open communication, clearly explain the reasons for the change and how it will impact employees. Encourage feedback, create safe spaces for employees to ask questions and share concerns. Empathy and support, understanding and emotional reactions, and provide reassurance during uncertainty. Clarity and direction, set clear goals and provide structured guidance throughout the change process. Building trust, consistent, honest messaging helps build trust and credibility and also reduces resistance. Monitor and adjust, staying involved, track progress, and being flexible to make improvements when needed plays a vital role when implementing an organizational change. Next, and motivating employees to embrace change. By involving employees early, participation in planning helps employees feel ownership, highlighting the benefits. Emphasize personal and team advantages when change. Recognize and reward. Acknowledging efforts and celebrating small wins with processes come a long way for employees to feel appreciated. By providing training, it ensures employees feel confident and confident with new processes. Foster a growth mindset. By encouraging the idea that change leads to learning and development, use change champions, empowering influential team members to advocate for themselves to support the change. Being transparent, sharing ideas as well as updates regularly helps to reduce confusion, uncertainty, and wrongful rumors. Group and individual mindset. To have success, focus on motivating employees. Make the change igniting and easy. Communicate goals and take steps to facilitate the change. Training, team building, survey feedback, buy-ins. Models of planned change. And today we will be comparing the Lewis process model with our project. In the picture, it states that unfreezing, change, refreezing, emphasis on preparation, implementation, and stabilization, popular approach all play a vital role in this change. Using figure 16.1 from Lewis process model of organizational change, it states, and Lewis three-step model change is a systematic process of transition from an old way of doing things to a new way. Inclusion of unfreezing stage indicates the importance of preparing for the change. Refreezing stage reflects the importance of following up the change to make it permanent. Models of planned change. Continuous change process model. Planned improvements throughout behavioral science, emphasis on strategy, leadership, team development. Planned change from the perspective of top management treats change as continuous. Assistance from a change agent equal a person or persons who will be responsible for managing the change efforts.
Steps for change. Organizational change isn't something that happens on a whim. It needs to be planned, purposeful, and supported by a clear strategy. The first step is developing a structured plan for change. This means no spontaneous or reactionary decisions, but instead a guided process that maps out each phase of the change implementation. The plan should have a specific intention, usually to improve the organization's effectiveness. This could mean streamlining operations, adapting to market shifts, or realigning the structure to support long-term goals. But perhaps the most important aspect is anticipating organizational behaviors and incorporating them into the process. Unlike purely technical or financial changes, organizational development is deeply rooted in human behavior. Psychology helps us understand individual reactions to change. Sociology gives us insight into group dynamics, and organizational culture helps decode workplace norms and values. Together, these fields guide how we communicate change, manage resistance, and foster buy-in from employees. Real-world examples of reorganization. In my organization, we recently experienced 2 significant reorganizations, both of which added a layer of management and reshaped the structure to improve oversight, coordination, and service delivery. The first change came with the City Council initiated a reorganization and the introduction of the city's executive team. This involved the creation of 3 new executive director positions, which significantly reduced the number of direct reports to the city manager. The goal was to enhance oversight across all city operations, while also encouraging organizational innovation and leadership development within the department director level. These executive directors are now working closely with both the city manager and the city council to begin developing and updating the city's long-term strategic plan, setting a clear course for the future. The second reorganization occurred within our Public Works Department, following 2 key retirements. Leadership took this opportunity to assess management roles, restructure responsibilities, and reassess functional areas for efficiency. This divisional reorganization introduced a revised management structure that laid the groundwork for hiring additional frontline staff. The primary goal was to create greater synergy, improve service delivery to the community, and ultimately boost overall organizational effectiveness and productivity. Both reorganizations reflect intentional, well-structured efforts to respond to change and position the organization for long-term success. Conclusion. Organizational change is multifaceted. It touches people's processes, structures, and culture. It's not something that can be left to chance. To manage change effectively, organizations need structure, support systems, and most importantly, clear communication. Change is inevitable, whether it's due to market shifts, internal growth, or leadership transitions, but the risks can be managed with the right strategies in place. And those strategies start with understanding people. Behavioral approaches help ensure that the change isn't just implemented, but accepted and sustained over time. In the end, successful organizational change is about more than just reworking a chart. It's about shifting mindsets, mitigating resistance, empowering teams, and building a culture that can adapt and thrive.